Okay. Welcome everyone to Clay and Conversations today with our guests Helen Drutt and Jill Bonovitz. I am Jennifer Zwilling, Curator and Director of Artistic Programs here at the Clay Studio. We are recording this, so I want everyone to know that. We also want to recognize that the Clay Studio stands on the indigenous territory known as Lenapehoking, the traditional homelands of the Lenni Lenape people. We would like to take a moment to reflect on the role of the Lenape as the past, present, and future stewards of the land, and the role that all of us can join in their tradition of respect and caring for the land and for each other. I'm going to turn our attention to our two guests, and first I'm going to offer a little bit of biography about each of them. After graduating from Columbia University, Jill Bonovitz taught children with special needs in New York City. She moved back to her hometown of Philadelphia and studied at Moore College of Art and Design. In 1974, with 4 other Moore affiliated artists, Bonovitz founded the Clay Studio. And here we sit now. Thank you, Jill, and the rest of you. I see some of you on the Zoom. Jill maintains an active studio practice in several media, has participated in many group shows, and had numerous solo exhibitions and received many awards, including the Moore College of Art Visionary Woman Award, the Leeway Foundation Grant for Excellence, and the Leeway Award for Artist and Sculpture and Three-Dimensional Craft. Her artwork is included in the collections of the Hermitage Museum, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Stedelijk Museum, Stedelijk, thank you, Helen, in Amsterdam, among others. Bonovitz has served on the boards of the Merce Cunningham Dance Company, the Clay Studio, and the Fabric Workshop and Museum. She serves on other boards around the country in New York. Her work is in private collections as well. And in addition, for the last 3 decades, Jill and her husband, Sheldon Bonovitz, have assembled one of the finest private holdings of American outsider art, or work by self-taught artists. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you.
Helen Williams Drutt English is renowned worldwide for her significant contributions to the advancement of modern and contemporary craft. Her deep commitment as an author, gallerist, educator, consultant, and collector has helped shape knowledge of the field in innumerable ways. She founded Helen Drutt Gallery in Philadelphia in 1973. After being one of the founding members of the Philadelphia Council of Professional Craftsmen in 1967. She's considered to be the godmother of craft and a global ambassador, serving in both of these capacities since the 1960s. She's championed and promoted American craft internationally and helped to elevate studio craft into the realm of fine art. She's received numerous honors for her profound impact on the field of craft, including Honorary Fellow of the American Craft Council and the Lifetime Achievement in Craft Awards from the National Museum of Women in DC. In 1973, she founded the gallery, and that same year developed the syllabus for the first college-level course in the history of modern craft. Helen Drutt Gallery was among the first in the United States to make a commitment to modern and contemporary craft and played a critical role as America's ambassador for crafts, championing that work by, in many ways, including a major gift to the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia, and another one to the Swedish National Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. Helen Drutt holds honorary degrees from many universities, including Tyler School of Art, Moore College of Art, Alfred University, University of the Arts. She was awarded the Mayor's Art and Culture Award here in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Craft Medal from the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Founders Circle Award from the Mint Museum of Craft and Design. Currently, Helen is working on a new exhibition of international bracelets, bangles, and cups that will be on view at the Metal Museum in Memphis, Tennessee. And next fall, she will give the Peter Dormer Lecture at the Royal College of Art in London and will discuss the dozens of major exhibitions she has organized over the last 60 years, including the Soup Tureen Show in 1976 at the Campbell Museum, her Cup Show, and the 2001 Poetics of Play show at the Art Alliance here in Philadelphia. So I tried to make sure that those 2 bios wouldn't take up the whole hour because you're both so distinguished that there is a lot to say. And now we're going to turn to the question that I always ask, which is, how and why did you make the brave decision to make your life in the arts?
Before I answer that, I just want to say, when I went to pick up Helen this morning, the first thing she said to me is, "I'm so nervous." And what I said to her is, "I'm so nervous." And I was hoping she was going to calm me down, but supposedly I'm going to calm her down by going first.
And neither of you thought about the fact that I might be nervous, but I am
Everybody's.
interviewing these two amazing people, but I'm not nervous because it's just a nice conversation with friends.
So the way I got into this was my mother had an art gallery in Philadelphia, the Janet Fleischer Gallery. And I grew up with art and was surrounded by art my whole life. And my mother just thought artists were the greatest, like the most wonderful people. So I remember that. And when I was at Columbia, I decided to take a pottery class in the village with David, somebody, I can't remember his last name. But like most people, it was throwing that really, drew me in. And I hardly throw anymore, but at the time it was great. I loved it. And I took a lot of art classes at Columbia. And then I had 2 kids, and I went back when the youngest was a year old. I went back to Moore College of Art. And that's when I met the 4 other people who we all were looking for a studio. And we found a great building in Old City, and it was way too big for us. So we had the idea, let's rent out some spaces and then we can afford to stay here. And that was the beginning of the Play Studio.
You had that early impetus that your mother thought artists were really cool.
Right. She just, when she started her gallery, it was the idea, first of all, there weren't very many women gallerists. And so she started it with the idea of paintings being under $100. She was on Manning Street. That didn't work out so well. So then she moved to a bigger space and started adding people to the,
Going above $100.
Went on from there. And the gallery still exists in one form with John Ullman. So it's the Fleischer Ullman Gallery. He took over when my mother retired.
But didn't she also have a gallery in Paris?
For about 10 years, she had a gallery in Paris. And so she would go over every year and just, it was run by somebody in Paris. But, and it had French artists. It didn't have any American artists. And my father had no interest in art. And he would go with her to Paris and he'd sit in the cafe and read the paper. The American paper. And she would see artists, and she had great stories. I mean, the people that came into the gallery, Joseph Beuys begged her to buy his work. And she didn't, unfortunately. But there were stories like that.
Did you get to go to Paris?
Yeah. And in the one summer, she, the woman who was running the gallery in Paris, took it to the south of France. And so my sister and I went and helped her, supposedly. But we had a great time. It was really fun. But we were never part of, the gallery per se.
And she was a healer.
I was going to say that. I have that written down. She was a healer. She healed you. Good. I had a friend, George Masnick, who had a terrible knee. And he came into the gallery and she put her hands on his knee. And he swears that that's what did it. He's fine to this day. And at lunchtime, people's lunch hour, they would come in and get healed by her. She put her hands wherever. And that was a big, she was very, in certain ways, very far out. She did a course in miracles. She went to seances, and that was sort of another part of her life.
She healed me.
How did
She came to my gallery. I was having great difficulty walking. And she came and she healed my feet and she told me to be quiet. And, you know, within a matter of half an hour, I was able to be ambulatory again.
That's great.
And I could feel the heat. I
Yeah.
remember I could feel the heat from her hands. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
She was amazing. She also had a dowser, and we would ask questions, and if it went one way, it was yes, the other way was no.
Did you inherit any of this, Jill?
I meditate, that's about it.
That's amazing. It's a very Philadelphia, I'm thinking of Madame Blavatsky, the philologist. No, I'm saying the word wrong. You know, philosophy. Thank you, Judah.
Right.
I knew you'd rescue me. She had that's the White Dog Cafe, right? She had a white dog and she would play the white dog on whatever.
really?
Was
Right.
ailing.
It
That was the
didn't-
time of seances in the late 19th century.
Didn't she have a home on Walnut Street? The theater?
There is, yeah,
Yeah.
Theosophical Society.
Yeah,
is-
the
is still
society,
there.
right. it's there.
I think
Before
it's
they
in the-
became partners, right?
And she was very influential as an artist. She did speak poetry on.
Many connections. We need to write an essay about the connections between your mother and Madame Blavatsky.
Right.
Love it. Thank you, Jill. Okay, Helen, how about your early, what made you want to go into
Well, first of all, I was born,
the arts?
and that was the initial moment in which I knew that I would be entering the artistic world.
Yeah,
Actually, I had a very, very interesting parents. My father really loved beauty, and he constantly would go to antique shops and he would purchase, and my mother would have to put, you know, she would have to go there and stabilize his budget. And my mother was extremely pragmatic. I used to say that my mother would teach me how to make my bed. My father taught me which sheets to buy. And that was really true because I had this duality between them. It was really amazing. But I think the most important thing for me, you know, aside from being born and growing up with two extraordinary parents, was the GI Bill.
What's what?
Was the GI Bill. Because I was a product of the late 40s, you know, I was a young teenager in the late 40s. The GIs were coming back from the war, and then suddenly the government established in 1944 that anybody who fought in the war or served in the war got free education and had a place in society. And it was that moment that in my late teens made me start to go to Bucks County because I heard that all these people were starting their own studios. You know, Nakashima had come from the camps, and Paul Evans was an engineer who had come from the war, and Philip Lloyd Powell was there, and Byron Temple was there, and I became very curious about why were all these people starting studios and making things by hand. You know, when here I was growing up in a society in which everything was industrially made. You bought your dishes, you bought your furniture, but you didn't know who made it. And suddenly this world in the late 40s opened up to me, and I think was the embryonic catalyst for my interest in the crafts.
and then you bought a piece from Nakashima.
Oh, right. So I acquired my first piece from Nakashima in 1953. I remember that it was $18.
$18.
I remember going into his Quonset hut, and his son was sitting on his shoulders. He was a baby. And I remember being very nervous about going there, but I went to see him. And then from there, I went to see Philip Lloyd Powell and Paul Evans, and I began to acquire one piece like a year. And I made a decision not to live with industrially made furniture or ceramics And the only thing that was industrially made, I guess, was my sofa and my bed and my mattress. But it was that moment of trying to understand why things were being made by hand. Because Arthur Drexler at that time at the Museum of Modern Art had said that everything would be made industrially because we were in a mechanical age.
Mhm.
So it was the GI Bill, which was the catalyst for all these people to come back from the war, to establish their own studios, and then also to make it possible for former GIs to teach in the schools. Like Bill Daly came, and he started teaching ceramics, and Abels was teaching weaving, and Mr. Rogers was teaching metalsmithing, and suddenly you could take crafts as an elective, and you were, it wasn't just painting and sculpture anymore. It was furniture and ceramics and metalsmithing, and although I don't think Rudy Stoffer was not a GI, but he had come uh, from New Orleans to take a teaching position at Tyler in the late 30s. And in fact, some of his early work, which is now in the museum, shows his car, on a stoneware pot driving from New Orleans up to Philadelphia. So this was what was happening in our area. And I was curious, and I was looking at work and talking to the artist and making notes. And before I knew it, I was totally immersed in the craft.
And that's, so I just want to pause for a second and say that Helen created that first craft history class for
Mhm.
PCA, which is very much,
That was in 1973 because they could not find
right,
the arts and crafts movement in America from 1876, I think, was to 1918 at the Princeton University Museum. And Robert Judson Clark was the professor who put that together. And we went to see him, asking him if he would broaden the class and bring from 18 up to the present. And he said he didn't want to do the research for he didn't want to do any more research. He had done it for before the World War I and after World War I. And he said, if you really want to do anything, read Pevsner. But he said, nobody's going to put the curriculum together. So George Culler, who was at that time the president of Philadelphia College of Art, said, throw her into the library for 6 months and have her put a syllabus together because she doesn't stop talking about the crafts. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so for 6 months, I was in the library. I actually even went to England and looked up information about the beginning of the arts and crafts movement and William Morris, tried to find out how it came back from there to the United States. And I started the first class in the fall of '73.
and if you think about that idea that, so now American craft now had a history in 1973, and in 1974, the Play Studio was formed.
Right.
So it was the GI Bill, then this whole period of time when the GIs were going to school, then
Right.
becoming teachers, then they had sort of their generation of
Right.
students. And then it was the period from the 70s into the 80s when all of these craft organizations
Right.
were formed. Play Studio, the Center for Art and Wood,
Right.
Fabric Workshop,
Right.
all of these
Fabric
places.
Workshop was much later. It was
81.
it was the end of the '70s because Ann
Well, no, but-
Davenport.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, like,
Okay.
the rest of the 70s was the next stage of this outgrowth of all these things that you're talking about, and it was the Philadelphia craft renaissance. I'm
Right.
gonna get that in the
All
history
right,
books.
but also what was very important was Objects USA.
In the craft show,
Right,
76.
but also very important was Objects USA in 1969.
Sure.
In
But I
sponsorship.
think it's really your class,
No,
but
no. I can't compare with Johnson Wax, please. But because Objects USA was major.
sure.
It was the
It
first time that a national exhibition of crafts in the United States was put together by Paul Smith and Lee Nordness
Mhm.
and traveled all over the United States and then eventually into Europe.
Yeah, and it's all of these things were the foundations of the next wave, and this interesting thing that happened with the Clay Studio and other places, and then evolved. And I can't help but mention that I was empowered to also teach a class like that because I knew that Helen had done it first. I want to open Jill a
In
PowerPoint.
the midst of all this was Jill Bonovitz.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in the midst of this, Jill is going to
Play studio.
well, first to more, right? And
Right.
thinking about
I was going to Moore and I finished Moore in 74 and that was when Ken Favrick, who was our teacher, and Kathy Dalzell, Janice Marandino, and Betty Perazano, who's not around anymore. Our class was finished, and so we needed a place to work. And that's when we went to this building on Oriana Street and started the Clay Studio. And the thing that was so great about it was when we took in other artists, everyone was doing something different. Some people were doing sculptural work. Martha Jackson, who had the space next to mine, was doing these fabulous cover pots with these African animals on the top. And some people were doing just straight throwing and functional work. So it was really a wonderful environment to get ideas, to talk about your work with other artists. And so everything was hunky-dory until they wanted to sell the building. And we couldn't afford to buy it. So we found another building across from Rosenfeld's gallery on Arch Street. And one summer weekend, we moved all the clay stuff over to this new building. I remember it was like really hot. The stuff is like really dirty and heavy. And so, but we did it. We moved over and set up the new space and got it going. And 6 months later, one weekend, I was in Cleveland seeing with my husband, seeing his parents. And when we got home, a neighbor said to me, "Did you hear about the Clay Studio?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, it burned down." So we went down there and it was like totally gone. Everything was gone. And I had been in the craft show for 3 years. I think it was the first 3 years of the craft show. And so you had to take everything for your space. And I had these huge walls and all the platforms for the pieces and all this stuff. And it was all gone. Except there was one pot that was sitting on where my space was. And it was that pot that's on the screen with the dots. It was not fired. It was just, I had made it and set it on the shelf and the fire fired it. Those black marks are from the fire. And I took it. It's been on our coffee table since then.
and now it's in the
And
gallery.
now it's in the gallery.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the piece on the left is an early work of yours that Claire Rogers has. And I can't help but notice that there's, the mark making that you were doing is not that far from what the fire did.
That is also, I put something in the pot that made that mark.
Oh, you like something that would burn out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still making dots.
Great.
That other one that you showed before this, the large one.
I'll go back. Cursor.
That one on the left, if you go down to the gallery and look at it, it's really beautiful. The surface is like wet sand that's been, the sand has been there for a while. It's not freshly wet, but it's really sensuous and beautiful. It's an amazing glaze interesting, really. I had never seen it. It's quite lovely.
And here you've taken organic material, these berries, and they're your dogs.
Right, exactly.
But instead of putting them into the kiln, and you've added them afterward.
Right.
So great.
The surface is terra sigillata, which is deflocculated clay. So you mix up clay and then you put calgon in it.
Calgon.
And you let it sit for a while and then it comes out. The water's on top, terra sigillata's in the middle, and the stuff you throw away is in the bottom. And then you can put different colors into it.
So do you have a sense of, tying all these ideas together? When you went from getting your degree at Columbia to taking classes at Moore, did you have a sense that there was like a growing excitement around ceramics, or that it was becoming something that was more of a valid quote unquote art form? Or, maybe
No,
your
I was-
mom, who was in the painting world, we can go back to all of these things and think about what the perception.
I was just really immersed in what I was doing. And I don't think I thought like that because since I had always been around art, it was just more art. You asked us for things about the clay studio, remembrances. And one was that I had 2 young kids at the time. So like at 3 o'clock, I'd have to like throw, cover everything and leave. And, it's just, it's a little hard sometimes. But another thing was back to the camaraderie. At lunch, we would sit out on the loading dock and we'd bring our lunch. And it was a great time to talk about what you were doing. We didn't always talk just about clay, but it was a memorable time.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, again, that kind of brings us back to the idea that the community was a reason why you all started the clay studio. And it's very much about what Helen's whole career has been about. I think it's drawing people together around this art that we all love and making friends.
My goal was always to be in Helen's gallery.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So I joined Nexus Gallery, which was an artist room gallery. And I had a show there and I dragged Helen over and, we talked about the show and I sort of hinted about her gallery. She hinted that I wasn't ready. So then a couple of years, whenever I had my next show, took her over and it was closer, but not it yet. And then the third time she said, would you like to show me my gallery?
And that must have been a nice, I mean, that's mentorship. She was offering you, you must have had a sense that she was encouraging you to keep trying and that was gonna.
Right, and last
you.
year, her work entered the permanent collection of the National Museum of Sweden in Stockholm. And she had a double-page spread. These little miniature pots. We're just running across a double page when the large piece by Daly was sort of condensed into one page on the left-hand side. So there she is, right, in Sweden and also in Hermitage. And then we began with the museum in Den Bosch in the Netherlands.
Right.
So
that's why I wanted to be associated with them.
I thought it was
She got around the world.
I thought it was because she liked
That was that too.
All of the above.
Right.
That's the thing. You get to work with the people who you like working with and being in the life that you
It's
make.
hard to see, but this is
There's another one.
my more recent work.
2 views.
It's porcelain with sulfates underneath. And those lines are from the way I poured out the glaze. It took me a while to get onto that, but after a while I could control it. And it's very, it's translucent. And I feel like it really represents sort of what everything has been leading to. It's the scale that I have been working in. I've done a lot of work with porcelain. So this is sort of the culmination of all that.
Having learned and become skilled enough to control it the way you want to.
More or less.
It's almost like the cosmos,
It's
it's like the sky.
It is like the sky or the ocean. Yeah.
Well, I know that we also in the gallery have one of your wire pieces, which is very hard to see on the screen. I apologize. This is a detail, and then
You
oh,
have
it's
to
so
come to
very.
the play studio so you can see.
You have to go downstairs, yeah, or come in, and it's part of what's so magical about it is that it is so ephemeral. You have to really walk around it. You have to kind of stare at it for a long time. So, do you want to talk about how you
I do it. You know, it has the same feeling to me as the clay pieces. But the way I got to wire was we needed a fruit basket. So I made a large clay bowl and all the fruit rotted at the bottom. So I thought, okay, I'll have to make something where the air can flow. So I took a coat hanger, probably 2 coat hangers, and I made them into a basket. And which was really hard because, you know, coat hangers. And so I took it home, put all the fruit in it, and that didn't work either. It got like this line underneath all the fruit. So I took it and I hung it up at my studio, and it was hanging on the wall for like 5 years. But I always loved the way it looked. So I thought, I'm going to try and make some wire, do something in wire with easier to work with wire. And I started out making basket forms. And then I think I got a commission to do a piece that had to hang. And so that's how I started doing hanging pieces. And now I really feel like I've been doing them for a long time. So some go on the wall, some go on a platform, some hang. And they're really fun. And I started painting them a couple of years ago. I don't paint the whole thing, but I paint parts of it. And I really, it really enhances the piece to me, as well as I think it draws the viewer in more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of, you have to notice it. And
You
then
have to
once you
notice it.
notice it, you can really spend a long
You
time.
have to hope that there's some good shadows.
Yeah.
That helps.
I've moved it 3 times in the gallery before we found this spot. But you know, it also is so related to that, you know, we talked about your dots, but the line work
Yeah.
is related and those textural.
And lots of my porcelain pieces have drawing in them. Most of the functional work I've done has drawing in it. And the drawing relates to Cy Twombly, but also to sort of the wire work relates in a way to Bill Anastasi, who was did these subway drawings.
Oh yeah.
The jiggles of he would sit on the subway on his way to play chess with John Cage. And he'd sit there with big earphones on, so he didn't hear anything, and a pad of paper on each leg and a pencil. And he'd let the jiggles, he'd close his eyes and let the jiggles of the subway make the drawings. And I always loved them. And we actually traded pieces. I got a subway drawing and he got enough pottery for his
Kitchen.
for his kitchen and his play settings. But so there was something in that kind of line that I really responded to. And plus children's drawings. I'm very drawn to children's art. So I can put all that into the drawings on porcelain functional. It's a little subtle here.
Do you have it, and what's next in the studio that you want to share?
What's next is back to the subway drawings. My grandson Quinn and I were we go to Telluride to the film festival every year, and we take our grandchildren and their parents. And so one of them is very interested in art, and when he was 8 years old, 10 years ago, I was telling him about the subway drawings in Wilhelmstrasse, and he really thought that sounded fun. So the two of us, we each got a notebook, and we did it around Telluride. We did it on the gondola, we did it walking around, on the bus, everything. And then his mother took we didn't know this, she gathered all the drawings afterwards, and she made a little booklet of it. And I was looking at the booklet recently, and I thought, these drawings really relate to my wire pieces. So I took the booklet to my studio, and now I'm translating trying to make the drawings into wire pieces. It's not so easy. Doing the jiggle drawing was a lot.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, I wanted to show some images of, in a way, the environments that you have created, Helen, both conceptual environments with friends and artists in the gallery and PCPC and all the other things. It's one of your works of art, but then also your gallery on the left and your home on the right. Yeah. So I thought we could make sure people could see those spaces.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about
What
just I don't know, the Paula Winokur fireplace or your
Well,
gallery?
the slide on your left is the back room of the first gallery at 1625 Spruce Street. And Walter Rich, who was a well-known Philadelphian, was building a store in Paris for Ted Lapidoux. And he knew that I had a very tight budget, so he had stainless steel left over, and he actually made the cases for the gallery, which was really extraordinary.
Oh, that's it.
But that was the back room, and it was painted purple and it had a purple rug, because I liked it. But that's 1973 till about 1981. On the photograph on my right?
Yeah.
Yes, on my right, is in the front room of 2222. I have a double house. I have two row houses together. One row house is for my living. Actually, the other row house is Madness, which is this house here, in which artists have done projects. The fireplace that you see there was done by Paula Winokur in 1988. And it was the second one because the first one just didn't function. But this one really did work, and you're able to use the fireplace. And I think it's one of the most sensuous fireplace surrounds that Paula did. I have to say that, I have to interrupt myself and tell you that yesterday in the mail, I received 3 books from her children. And that did you get them also?
I haven't gotten them yet,
Right.
but yeah.
That they made one for Robert, one for Paula, and one for Robert and Paula. And they were photographs made from their archival material, not anything that is in private collections or museum collections, but just pieces that they were documenting that are part of their lives. And they just sent these 3 books. It's really a lovely, lovely gesture. Her children, Michael is a photographer, and he actually designed and completed these books. So it brought it to mind because of the fireplace, which is really wonderful. She did many fireplaces, and behind it is part of my library. My library is on 3 floors, whatever. It's on every single floor in the house. the bottom floor is Bauhaus and museum collections and contemporary jewelry and modern jewelry. The second floor is a monograph room. And then I ripped out a bathroom and I made that a catalog library so that all the catalogs that I've been, collecting since the late 60s now have its own archival space. And the bathtub is still there because the bathtub was put in 1947, and it couldn't be taken out because it was put in before the original wall was put in. So it's underneath the bookcases. But it's great because, and then on the other side, there's a ceramic library, and furniture library, and a textile library. So each room has its space, except that the monograph library is strictly monographs, painting, sculpture, architect, potter, weaver, metalsmith, glassblower, whatever. So, and because Susan Sontag said, forget the decimal system. Organize your library the way you think. And then, and that's what I did. So that's part of the library. And I have, curators come and sometimes they spend overnight and they use the resources of the library. There's a Joyce Scott show opening in Baltimore very soon. And I have all her original newspaper clippings from the late 70s and the early 80s.
Yeah.
Why I say these things, I don't know. I still have Ruth Duckworth's bag from her airplane when she thought she was going to die, and she wrote her last will and testament.
Oh, the barf
Remember
bag.
when they used to give
Oh,
you barf
no.
bags? They don't do that anymore. So I have her barf bag from 1972 with what would happen, and I'm wearing her.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Right.
say that. Yeah. I do want to save a couple minutes for other people's questions, but here are just two other views of Helen's house. Only things that have already been published. I'm not showing you sneaky from the internet. These are different articles that have been written about you. I promise they're not my photos of your house. But just so everyone can see that important environments, and that the Hermitage show was a representation.
No,
No, it's not.
that is not true.
That's not true. Okay.
And
that
we,
wrong.
and we can't get that information off the web. The Hermitage show was
Individual up.
was a group of individual objects, some which came from the artist and some which came from patrons.
Okay, so
Right.
it's not.
So
That's
what you
big.
see there is
Oop.
an old picture of the dining room with chargers by Robert Winokur on the table because I got tired of washing placemats, and so I asked him to make me ceramic chargers as placemats, and that's what you see on the table. And that I guess that saffron on the floor looks like a rug, but it's just a saffron, and then the living room has you can't see it now. It has a really wonderful collection of the Stoffel and piano, which is to the far left, and that's Nancy Carmen on the wall.
That's a great piece.
A big one.
It's
That
from
looks
her,
great.
it's from the series that she did for Honolulu. She did a series of figures, wall figures for the police department in Hawaii. And the wall figures are on either side of the entrances on each floor. And then she, as a result of that, it acted as a catalyst for her to do see no evil, do no evil, speak no evil. And so I have speak no evil.
Mhm. We have a little piece of hers in the collection.
Right, with a Warren Rourke to the right. See it?
Oh, yeah, the
The
painting.
two Warren Rourkes to the right.
Yeah, there, and then that's a Paula Winokur over there.
Yeah, that's a Paula Winokur there. Right. And the fireplace is probably 1847. It's the only living room in the entire block that has not been demolished.
Mm.
Every other living room in the block has been demolished and all the hallways have been removed. And in the far corner, you see the head?
Mhm.
That's Gertrude Lobold, who first showed here in the Eastern European exhibition.
Ah,
And I discovered her work, most of that exhibition, and then I went to Halle in Germany to see her, and I acquired that piece from her.
oh, great.
But it was the Clay Studio that was the catalyst for bringing that information into America, actually, not just Philadelphia. I don't know, do you still have those catalogs?
I do, we do, and we have a bunch of that work in the collection,
Right.
and I know it traveled to
Right.
3 cities.
So the
Um,
Clay Studio opened us up to the rest of the world.
As did you, and we have our 1983 catalog for American clay artists when Helen lent her name and wrote an essay, which I know would have been at that time a really important mark of approval for the
Right.
clay studio.
And that's a Stoffel.
And there's a really stuff.
There's a Rudy
I'm
Stoffel.
gonna stop sharing. Does anyone, and I'll just show this, I can't do this upside down. Can, would somebody mind turning the lights back on? See, it's too dark. Well, see, there's the
Right.
catalog, that's the Rudy Staffel. Okay,
Do you want to know how I got this?
yes, we definitely
A
do.
very interesting story. I was in Dublin at the World Crest Congress, which no longer exists, and it was pouring rain. And I was walking in the rain, and there were leaves just totally matted on top of the pavement. And then between some of the leaves, I saw porcelain. And I went down and I took my fingers, and I took the leaves away. And lo and behold, this was underneath all the wet leaves. And I looked at it and I said, Ruth Duckworth is here. And my friend said, you're crazy. How do you know she's here? I said, because only Ruth Duckworth could do porcelain like this. And it was in front of the International Hotel in Dublin. And I walked into the hotel and I asked the desk, is Ruth Duckworth registered here? They said, indeed. And I left this. I said, please let her know, I don't know her, that I found this on the pavement, in the wet pavement outside of the hotel. And lo and behold, we became friends. And she gave it to me. So that
great.
was 1970. And eventually I told you,
Thank you.
right,
Yes, and Helen's brought us 2
Tom Rippon.
Tom Rippon necklaces that we're going to, sorry, the people online won't be able to see, but in person we'll look at them together. And I know we only have 2 minutes left, but we
Right.
want to ask if anyone has any questions before we kind of wrap up.
What did you call the finish on that full,
Terra sigillata,
Okay.
Terra sigillata.
sigillum? Did you devise that?
No,
It's ancient. You burnish it after you put the surface on, and it can be all different, it can be kind of matte and the sort of the
well,
way you
it
said.
gets sort of depends how much you polish it, but you can get it, very shiny, pretty shiny. Or, or matte. But usually you buff it somewhat.
Or your dishes are just glazed.
Yeah, with underglaze under.
Anyone on Zoom, anyone have any other questions? No?
Yeah, I would jump in with one question.
Sure,
I
Bruce.
wonder if either of you ever imagined that the clay studio would grow into and become what it is today.
I certainly didn't.
Nor did I.
Once the fire, I thought, that's it. And then there were some wonderful people who kept it going for a while and then grew it again and eventually got it to where it is, which is amazing and wonderful.
So how do you feel when you enter it today, when you walk in? What's your sense when you walked into that new building?
Amazement. This is amazing. And Jennifer Martin, when she first came to talk to us about it, I just thought, is this really going to happen? Are they really going to build a building? I mean, I couldn't believe it. And 5 years later, there it was. Here it was.
Yes, with a lot of hard work in between and generosity of our community.
What's more amazing is how many people are making pottery and how many people can do it.
How many people?
It's like the whole world.
We have 625 people, students taking classes every term. And
Wow.
40 associate artists and 12 residents and 30 staff members. interns. Yeah. What about you, Helen? What do you think when you walk in the door?
Well,
I'm pitching for compliment. Thanks, Bruce, so I didn't have to be the one to ask this question.
I'm very pleased that I'm not interested in being a maker. Because when I tried in 1967, Bill Daley took my pot, held it in front of the class and said, "It's not even worthy for an SOS." And I never, ever tried again. And well, I
Happy
remember,
birthday,
I
Bill.
remember that book. Right. No, it is extraordinary. You know, it's extraordinary to see not only the classes, the exhibition space, but also the development of your growing, you know, your permanent collection, which is also a teaching entity as well. And I think you should all be very proud of yourselves for being able to not only initiate, but to implement this building and this amazing forum for education in all aspects of the field.
Well, and we wouldn't be able to be here without
Every,
the initial love of the craft, the art, the community. I mean, that spirit still lives here, and what both of you have given to the Philadelphia arts community is why it is strong enough to support a place like Play Studio. Thanks to both of you.
I feel humbled.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna sign off, and we will see all of our friends on Claim Conversations next week.